This is the KT AFOQT review. I'm Kenny T, and I'm going to review the first 5 sections of the AFOQT in the AFOQT Practice Test. This is going to help you understand how to answer the questions, what the questions look like, and help you improve your scores on the AFOQT, or get high scores if it's your first time. This should help you out, and if you enjoy it, go ahead and sign up for the KT AFOQT prep course. Let's get started. All right, first we got artist is the easel as weaver is to blank. So first we got to identify the relationship. So it's going to be a person to a tool or a trade. So the artist uses an easel to do the artist's job. So then we look at this and we know that it's going to be a weaver uses a loom to do their job. Then they use, there's cloth, there's garments pattern, but it's the loom that actually does it. One way to think about how you would figure this out is say it out loud. Is the second word a tool, material, or product? It's a tool. There you go. So you look at these, a loom is the tool. All right, omnipotent is to weak as affluent is to blank. The relationship is an antonym, so that means they're opposites. Omnipotent means all powerful, and that's the opposite of weak. Therefore, affluent, which is wealthy, is the opposite of what? Which one of these is the opposite? Generous is not the opposite. Destitute is the one that's the opposite. All the other ones have to do with wealth, or wise has nothing to do with it. So destitute. Destitute, excuse me. Friction is to heat as gravity is to blank. Relationship is a cause effect. That's what we're looking at, is the relationship. Cause effect. Friction causes heat. Gravity causes what? Well, it causes weight, because weight is mass times gravity. So it causes weight. So the way to look at it is produce the colon with, so blank produces blank. So friction produces heat. Gravity produces weight. And there's your answer, is gravity produces weight. The way this can get confusing is force is too broad. Weight is specific. So gravity, of the force of gravity. So that's not really it. Motion, distance, none of those really make sense. Next one. Flock is to birds as pack is to blank. Well, we got a collective noun to the members. So a flock is a group of birds. So then you just put in the words, a pack is a group of what? Does it make sense to say a pack of horses, a pack of cows, a pack of bees, a pack of lions? No, it's a pack of wolves. Sarah weighs 198 pounds. If she loses 4 pounds per week, how much will she weigh in 5 weeks? Well, that's kind of simple. You take 198, 4 pounds per week. So we got 4 pounds every week, 5 weeks. So 4 times 5 is 20. 5 weeks, so that's 20. So 198 minus 20 is 178. Your answer is B. Key here is don't do nothing crazy like bad math or add instead of subtracting or something like that. Not a hard one. It's simple, but you got to make sure that you're paying attention. It's the easy math that gets you, not usually the hard stuff. Don't miss an easy question. This is an easy one. Tax and tip is 52.80. If an 18% tip is included after a 5% tax is added to the amount, how much is the tip? So we know we got 52.80. Yeah, there's an 18% tip, but that's after tax. The way they put it in the order, it'll get you confused and you'll do it wrong. First thing you need to do is figure out how much it is with tax. So we need to know 0.05%. So we take that and we do the math. So we end up with tax is $2.64. So we do 52.80 plus $2.64. Boom, and that gives us right at 55.44. That's the total. Now we got to figure out how much is the tax. So when you do that, you go ahead and multiply that times 18%. So we'll do 18%. All right, we end up with $9.97.9. So 9.98. So it's A. Here's the thing. You only got about a minute to answer each question. So you got to figure out a fairly quick way to look at this and come up with the answer. There's a couple things you can do to simplify what you're doing, right? So when we start off, we look at this and we see that we got 5280 times 5%. We do all that math, right? But if we know that this is like simple stuff, right? We're looking at 5% of what that is. We know that 10% of 5280 is $5.28. Half of 10% is half of that. So we would, without even doing that, I know that I'm going to add half of that to it. So I know that that's 264 quickly. So then I'd still end up with the 55.44. Then I got to figure out, all right, 18%. I would do quick math here, right? So I got about 50. It's about $50. And 18% of $50 is $9. You tracking with me? Because 50 is half of 100. So it would be half of that would be about $9. Well, it's a little more than that. So I know that it's not 8. It has to be more than that because 52 is more than 50. So it wouldn't be anything less than that. It wouldn't be 855, 792, or 650. And I know it's not 1089 because that would be more than that, right? And so that's why I know that it'd be A. That'd be a shortcut that I'd look at as I'm running through this instead of trying to go through all this because I just won't have time. I'd have to do a little bit of rounding and then roll with it. So that's the technique, but I advise you that when you're going through and practicing these, you go through the long way of making sure you understand how to do the problem. That way, when you get to do another problem like this, you can start to figure out what things you can round and what things you can kind of make adjustments for. So you don't have to try to solve it all the way to know the answer. If a motorcycle uses 2 gallons of gas every 40 miles, how many miles can it travel in 10 gallons? So the miles per gallon equals 40. So 40 miles in 2 gallons. All right, look, I'm going to just do this easy. If I got 2 gallons and it equals 40, I have 5 times as many gallons. So I'm just going to do 5 times 40 equals 200. That's it. I mean, there could have been a way longer way to do this, but I just see that I got 20 gallons and I got 40 miles. I'm going 5 times. I have 5 times as many gallons. I'm going to have 5 times the distance. Too easy. All right, this is a cast in the shadow problem. So we got a tree casts a 12-foot shadow while a 9-foot lamppost casts a 6-foot shadow. How tall is the tree? I sometimes draw these because it makes it easy to understand. So I got a tree. There's your tree. And it casts a 12-foot shadow. A lamppost, which is shorter, so is, let's say it's about that, so we'll make this tree taller. It casts, the shadow's the same, right? So we got a 12-foot shadow for the tree, and then the lamppost has a 6-foot shadow, and it's 9 feet high. We're trying to figure out what is the height of the tree. It's a ratio thing, right? So we look at this, the lamppost is 9 feet, and it casts a 6-foot shadow. It's going to be the same ratio as a 12-foot shadow on the whatever distance or whatever height of the tree is. So you can do cross multiplication, you can do simplification, but ultimately you want to solve for x. And if we look at this, we can simplify this. So let's simplify. This is by 2 2/3. So if we divide it by 3, that's 2/3. And then we find a ratio where it's like 2 times what equals 6, and 2 times blank equals 12, excuse me, it would actually be 2 times 6. If you want to simplify it, and that would give you that the tree is at 18, because it'd be 3 times 6 is 18. An even simpler way to even look at this is, even if you don't simplify this, if you got 6 over 9 equals 12 over x, look at this, and 6 times what equals 12 times 2. So 9 times 2 equals 18. That's the simple way to do it. On the bottom here, where I'm talking about reducing it, yeah, that's a way to like break it down on like what the ratio actually is. But when you're trying to solve the problem, you want to look at this and be like, hey, this ratio is pretty easy. It's 2 times the distance, like the shadow's 2 times. And so that ratio for that height is going to be double. So the ratio is what keeps it the same. Find those easy ways to make it similar. It's a triangle. There we go. Next. So it's a work rate type question. So 5 workers together can build a wall in 36 days. However, 1 worker can only work half days. So how long will it take to complete the job? Well, how much work is it going to be? All right, starting off here, it's going to take us 36 days for 5 people to build the bridge. So that's going to be 180 worker days of work. That's how much work is going to be required to complete the task. So look, we got the time equals the work over the rate. And in this case, when we look at this, there's 180 work days. Well, the rate is 5, so it's 36 days right now if we have 5 people working each day. But that's not what we're getting each day. We're only getting 4 people working every day and 1 person working half a day. So it's 180 work days of work, but only 4.5 actual, the rate is 4.5 worker days per day. So only 4.5 people's worth of work getting done each day. So we figure that out, and that gives us our answer. So then you got to figure out how to do the math quickly. And so the answer is 40 days. Now, once again, trying to figure out how do you divide 180 by 4.5, what's an easier way to do that? It's also a different way of writing it, right? Because when we look at it, we know that 4.5 is the same thing. I say we know this, but I'm saying this. 180 divided by 4.5 is the same thing as 9 divided by 2. When you divide something by something, this is the same thing as 180 times 2 over 9. So then it makes it easier, in my opinion, to do the math for this, right? Because I can easily divide 9 into 180, which would simplify this to, how many times does 9 go into 80? So that's 20. And 20 times 2 is 40. You can just do it long ways and figure out what 180 divided by 0.5 is. But if I'm making a fraction, I can more easily do it that way. So that's how I do it. And the answer is 40. This can get tricky because you've got to figure out how to set the problem up. Time equals work over rate. You figure out what the original amount of total work that has to be done is. And that's going to be your time, 36 days, times your rate, 5 workers, equals your total work, which is 180 worker days. So we got 5 workers for 36 days. So that's how we got 5 worker days. When we actually look at it, if you're trying to figure out for time, you would divide the work days by the rate. So from this, we can figure out how long it would take to do it if we had 2 people or 8 people or whatever it is. And that's what you would change your rate to, the number of people actually working on that bottom number. And then you can figure out how long it would take, etc. You can interchange it. So work through a couple of those problems and should be easy. in word knowledge. And this one, it's not really too much calculating, figuring out. You got to know it or not know it because you don't have much time to answer each question. About 12 seconds per question. So that means you got to look at it, think about it, and pick an answer. So let's go through. We'll think about it. We'll spend a couple minutes on it. Well, not even a minute. We'll spend less than a minute on each question just to kind of go through how it's going to be and what it's going to look like. All right, first question we got is eloquent. So eloquent, which word closely means eloquent? I would say persuasive. And when we look at persuasive, eloquent means like fluent, expressive. If you think eloquent, you think about the quality to be able to move an audience with words. And so persuasive is the one that most closely meets the word. What I look at is if I'm unsure of the word, I ask myself, which words don't mean the answer? And you can start there. If you start there, you can knock out a few and then pick from what's left. So we know that it's not hesitant, not rude, and not unclear. And it's really not silent. I mean, even just by elimination, you've already answered what eloquent is, if you have an idea what eloquent is. All right, let's go to the next question. Okay, erratic. Which word means erratic? We think about erratic. We think about how we put it in a sentence. And logical does not seem erratic. Boring does not seem erratic. Unstable could be it. That's what I would think it is. Predictable? No, because erratic is something that's not predictable. Weak is kind of off because it's not even, it's kind of just off, right? It's a confusing option. So take it out, put it in a sentence and ask yourself, if you replace erratic with unstable, could it be close? Like I said, it's not going to be exact, but it could be close, especially compared to the other options you had. All right, meticulous. When we look at meticulous, the answer for this one is careful compared to all the other questions. So meticulous, precise, detail-oriented. If you think about some of the things that's meticulous, it's usually not something that's fast or quick. It's not thoughtless. It's not impulsive or not messy. It's almost like if you just know what it doesn't mean, you can figure out what it is. All right, ominous. So ominous is the answer for ominous is threatening. What does ominous mean? So it gives a sense of something bad is coming. So think about an ominous movie or a ominous threat. And ominous feels just like when you say it that it has some type of negative vibe to it, if you want to think about it like that. So it's not any of those, but it's definitely threatening. All right, and the last one, to scrutinize. Scrutinize, something that's being scrutinized is being examined. This one can kind of pull you down a path because scrutinize is something that is examined closely, thoroughly, or inspect something that is inspected. It's about depth, detail, not destruction though. So if you're not sure about what scrutiny is, you might get stuck on thinking that it might be destroying, but it's not something that's destroyed or ignored. You're not going to glance at it. You're going to look at it with a more detailed eye. So examine is the answer for that. And that's it. Like I said, these will be quick. You're going to have to look at these and figure out which words are good, which words are bad. And these ones on this weren't too hard, weren't too bad, but the ones on the test will be maybe a little more challenging. I'll provide you with some more if you get the AFOQT prep course. All right, now we got the math knowledge section. So the math knowledge section, this one is going to be, you got about 12 seconds per question on this one. So this one's also a really quick one. So you got about a whole minute to answer the 5 questions on this section. So let's go. These are going to be really quick. You just got to know these. Like I said, I'm going to give you the answer, walk through it, and I'm going to show you how to quickly do it. Let's begin. What's the value of this right here? All right, the answer is E. Here's the thing. In the time that it takes me to actually say what the fractions are is time that I would have wasted like running through the whole test or the whole question. So when I look at this, I see that the denominator is the biggest denominator there is 32, and all of the numbers can have a common denominator of 32. So I would quickly say that 8 times 4 is 32, and 4 times 5 is 20, and 16 times 2, so 3 times 2 is 6, plus 7. So add those all up, and it gives me 33 over 32. Because even though I didn't write it down, I'm imagining that they're all 32. So I don't necessarily always have time to write it all out, but that's what it would look like. I'm essentially how do I make 5/8 into a denominator of 32? Multiply 8 times 4, and I multiply 5 times 4. I multiply 16 times 2, and 3 times 2, and that's how I get those numbers. All right, solve for the system of equations. Okay, system of equations you got to do these quick too. So what I'm going to do is system of equations. I'm going to figure out what do I have to multiply either the top equation or the bottom equation in order to cancel out one of the different numbers on the top equation or the bottom equation. Or if I'm going to do elimination, there's a few different ways to do it. Now, I can go through and I can multiply the top equation by 2 and the bottom equation by 5, and then I'll be able to have a total and then eliminate it. So let's say I do that, right? Let's say I do it that way. So top equation by 2, I get 8x plus 10y equals 44. Then the bottom equation I multiply by 5, so 15x minus 10y equals 25. Then I add the equation, so I get 23x, no y's, equal 69. Divide both sides by 23, x equals 3. Then I plug in 3. Well, really at that point, well, I know x is 3. So here's the thing. At that point, I already know that it's b because that's the only one where x is 3. So that's one way you can do it kind of quickly because you found out what x is and then you eliminate it because there's no other x. The other way that I would have done that quickly, if I'm looking at it and I don't got much time, I'm going to try to quickly do algebra on the bottom equation because it's pretty simple, right? So I'm gonna just start with a and go my way down. All right, if I look at this, I'm gonna go 3 times 2 is 6. 6 minus 0 does not equal 5, so it's not a. Next one, 3 times 3 is 9 minus 4 is 5. Boom, that's the answer. That, in my opinion, is an easier, quicker way than doing system of equations math. Unless you can do it quicker. Like if you can do some of this in your head, you could have all right, I honestly would have just did the algebra for it and ran through and answered those. That's the quickest way to get those ones done for this question, in my opinion. Try it both ways. All right, factor x squared plus 9x plus 20. All right, so we know that it's going to be something x plus something times x plus something, plus or minus something, right? We're just saying plus. What we know is that it's going to be, because of the rules of how FOIL works, it's going to be two numbers that add together. We got two numbers that add together to give you 9 and multiply together to give you 20. It's going to be what these two numbers are. So what two numbers add up to give you 9 and multiply together to give you 20? I would look at that and I'd start down the list and look at that. And yeah, it's A. It's the first one, right? But how would you go through and try to figure that out if you don't know? An easy, quick way to do it is if you know the multiples, you look at the number all the way to the right and you're like, all right, what are the multiples of 20? Multiples of 20 is 1 and 20, 2 and 10. There's no 3, but 4 and 5, right? That's it. Then ask myself, which set of these numbers add up to give me 9? And it'd be 4 and 5. So that's another easy way to look at it. All right, the factors are 20, 1, 2, 4, 20, 10, and 5, and these are only two numbers that give you 9 when you add them up. Multiplication of same base exponents. Multiplication, not addition. When you're multiplying like 10 to whatever, all you do is add up the exponents. And you got to write what's 3 plus 4 plus 5 is 12. It's B. All right, the hypotenuse of a right triangle. There's my right triangle, who has legs of 5 and 12 is blank. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So 25 plus 144 equals 169. Square root of 169 is what? Boom! If you don't know what it is, you know that 3 times 3 equals 9. So it's at least going to be the number that has a 3 at the beginning, at the end of it. Yeah, if you don't know, if you're like, well, what's the square root of that? Well, we know that 10 times 10 is 100. 11 times 11 is 121. 12 times 12 is 144. 13 times 13, here's the thing, even if I didn't know it, I know that it had to be two numbers multiplied together to give the digit all the way to the right of 9. The other thing, when you look at it is, when you look at a right triangle, 5 and 12, we know that the hypotenuse is longer than both of the sides, so it's not A, B, or C, which means it only can be 13 or 14. So if you have to guess one of those. There it is. That's math knowledge. You saw those were really quick. I didn't do a whole lot of like long math. It was a lot of quick to come up with the answer. But if you want to learn how to do each of the questions a long way, I can show you that too. I got some other videos that go more in depth on how to explain it. This was showing you how to quickly look at it to be able to actually answer the question, not to solve the question for a test in college. This is answer as many questions right as you can. That's the key to this. Answer as many questions and answer as many right as you can. Not get every question that you answer correct. Get as many questions answered correct. Sound like I said the same thing, but I didn't. I promise. Reading comprehension section. So this section, you're gonna read through a passage, answer 5 questions, which you already did. So first thing I do is I look through the questions briefly, look at what it's asking, and I go through and I read the passage. Read it fairly quickly because you're going to skim through it. I look at the main ideas, first sentence, the last sentence, first sentence, last sentence, first sentence, last sentence, and then I look through the entire thing in a somewhat quick manner in order to read and understand it. So this one is about artificial intelligence. All right, so what's one major ethical concern regarding AI decision making? So the answer is C, AI may reinforce biases presented in historical data. So let's take a look at what the claim is. I mean, it pretty much says, it says it right here in the first 2 sentences of paragraph 2. And that was one of the things we looked at when you're skimming through and you're looking at the first sentence, last sentence. You'll remember seeing that I just read that it said that in the first sentence of one of the paragraphs. All right, let's take a look at the next one. Why is the black box nature of AI a concern? All right, and so when we look at this one, the answer for this one is B. It makes it difficult to understand how decisions are made. And when we go back and look at this, it pretty much says it again, right? Many AI systems operate as a black box, meaning their decision process is not easy to understand or interpretable by humans. So that's a concern. It says it in one of the main sentences. All right, according to the passage, what are the ways to address ethical challenges in AI? So let's go to the conclusion and see what it says about that. Because usually at the end are where like solutions are generally at when you're looking at a passage, especially if it's a complete passage, not an excerpt. So when we look at this, it's critical to ensure the ethical guidelines replace measures such as algorithms, auditing, bias testings, and explainability requirements can help address it, right? So let's take a look at this. According to the passage, one way to address it is implementing bias testing and algorithm auditing. It's usually in there and there for you to know. I mean, it's there, right? It's there. Just look at it. All right, fourth one, example of unintended consequences. Let's see what it says. So we can look at it and actually scan to see if there's any exact examples of it. And we can look, as you scan, analogies tools have been found to be disadvantaged for female applicants if trained on data sets where men historically dominated industry. There you go. It gives it to you right there. And then what's the author's primary argument about AI and decision making? We can look at this. Thing is, by the time you've gone through the first 4 questions, you should have gone through and seen not just the question, but reviewed the passage multiple times. And as you get further along, you may not have to go back and look at the passage again and know the answer to this. So what's the author's primary argument about AI and its decision making? It should be replaced by humans. Nope. Inherently unethical and should be banned. Nope, that's not it. Should not be used in government law enforcement. Is only useful in creative industry. Can be beneficial, but must be carefully regulated and monitored. That's what I got from it, and that's the end. And boom, that's it. That's the first 5 sections of the AFOQT. With that, you got a good idea of what it's going to be like on the test, but there's still more. If you want to find out more and be able to get the rest of the sections of the AFOQT, then sign up for the AFOQT Prep course by KT. It'll get you that, and it's over hundreds of questions to help you practice and prepare so you can get those high scores you need to get whatever job you're trying to get in the Air Force. Check it out. Kenny T out.